Okay, today guys we are going to talk about arithmetic and geometric series. And a series is a set of pattern numbers that are added or subtracted. So in our previous lesson we were talking about sequences and we were just doing the pattern of numbers and they had commas between them. Now they're going to have pluses or minuses between them. An arithmetic sequence again is one where you add or subtract to get to the next term. So if we're trying to do the sum of an arithmetic sequence, series, there's a formula for that, and that is S sub n for the sum of however many that we're doing. N is again how many in that pattern, equals n over 2 times a sub 1 plus a sub n. That's supposed to be an n, excuse me. So we need our first term, we need our last term, and we need how many terms that we are using to be able to do this formula. For the geometric sum, again, the sum of however many that we're adding is a sub 1 times 1 minus r to the n over 1 minus r. And I just want to make a note that where r is not equal to 1, because obviously if r were equal to 1, we'd have a very boring geometric series where it would be like 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2, because remember, geometric means that you're multiplying to get the next term. So if you multiply by 1, you're not really doing anything interesting there. Alright, so let's move to some examples. First one, finding the sum of the first 7 terms, 1 plus 3 plus 5 plus 7, and it continues. They didn't give us the 7th term. I'm going to need the 7th term because this is arithmetic. I'm adding 2 to get to the next spot. So I know the difference between these is 2, even though that's not in my formula for a sum. I also know that a sub 1 is 1, and I'm trying to use n equals 7 because I want 7 terms. And again, for my formula, s sub 7, I'm going to be using 7 over 2 a sub 1 plus a sub 7, and I don't know that, so I need to find that using the formula from the previous lesson. So a sub 7 is going to equal a sub 1 plus n minus 1, so 7 minus 1 times d. And so if I do that calculation, I get 13. So a sub 7 is 13. I can now plug it in, and my sum is going to be 49. And we'll move to our next example. Alright, we want to find the sum of the first 15 terms, so n is 15, of an arithmetic series where a sub 1 is negative 5 and a sub 15 is 23. This time we're not missing anything. I can just plug straight in. S sub 15 would be 15 over 2. A sub 1 is negative 5 and a sub 15 is 23. So I plug those in, do my calculations, and I should get 135. For the next one, we're summing the first 10 terms of this series, and if I look at it, I know my a sub 1 is 2. I am adding 3 to get each term after that, so my difference is 3. I'm wanting the 10 terms, so n is 10. And again, I'm missing that 10th term. Well, you could write the whole thing out until you got to the 10th term, or it's probably better practice to use the formula from yesterday. I want a sub 10, so I'm going to do the first one plus n minus 1 times the difference, and the difference is 3. So that gives me 29 as that 10th term. So then my s sub 10 would be 10 over 2, my a sub 1, which is 2, plus my a sub 10, which is 29. Let me make that a little better. 2 plus 29. And that will calculate out to 155. Alright, and then we move on to example 4. And example 4 said to find the first 6 terms. So n is going to be 6 of 1, 2, 4, and 8. Now this one, if you notice, you're adding 1 here, you're adding 2 here, you're adding 4 here. So this is not arithmetic, because arithmetic would be adding the same amount. This is going to be geometric because you're multiplying by 2. 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8. So this is geometric, and our r is 2 because that is what we're multiplying by. And again, I want 6 terms, so n is 6. So s sub 6 would be the first term. I forgot to write that down. My a sub 1 is 1. My first term times 1 minus r to the n, which is 6, over 1 minus r. Again, you want to make sure you work out the inside of this parentheses. Sometimes the first number is not 1. Obviously, multiplying by 1 is not going to change anything, but if it was a 4 or a 5, that would make a difference. Work out the inside of the parentheses first. 1 minus 2 to the 6. Well, 2 to the 6 is 64, so I'm going to get a negative 63 on top, and multiplying by 1 is still going to keep it as a negative 63. And then 1 minus 2, I'm going to have negative 1 on the bottom. 2 negatives will make a positive, and so my sum is 63. Alright, for example 5, we have another geometric series. My a sub 1 is 2, and I want the first 5 terms, so n is 5. And then my r is what I'm multiplying by, and you can easily see that it's 3. R is 3 because 2 times 3 is 6, and 6 times 3 is 18. And then I just plug in. So s sub 5 would be the first term, 1 minus my r to the 5th, over 1 minus r. And so, again, I'm going to work that inside of the parentheses first, and I get a negative 242. On the bottom, 1 minus 3 would be a negative 2. And the 2's will cancel and the negatives will cancel, so I end up with a positive 242. For example 6, I'm given everything I need. Since they're giving me an r, I know it's geometric, so I'm going to use my geometric formula. I want s sub 8, so I'm going to use my first one times 1 minus my r. I'm going to put it in parentheses because it's negative, to the 8th, over 1 minus my r. Now, in this case, again, make sure you're careful on the inside. Negative 2 to the 8th is going to be a positive number, and so 1 minus that is going to give us a negative. Make sure you're typing in correctly. You should get negative 255 if you type in correctly. On the bottom, 1 minus negative 2 is a positive 3, and then this is going to reduce and give us negative 765. Alright, last couple of examples. Have some fractions in there. S sub 6, 1, 1/2, 1/4. Well, at first glance, you're like, okay, I'm dividing by 2, but remember I said yesterday, dividing is the same thing as multiplying by a fraction. So really, you're multiplying by the fraction 1/2, and if you forget, your r is always your second term over your first term. So our r in this case is 1/2. That's what I'm multiplying by. And my a sub 1 is 1. And I want s sub 6, so n is 6. So s sub 6 is a sub 1, 1 minus r, which is 1/2, to the 6th, over 1 minus r, which is, again, 1/2. So if you work this out on top, again, 1 times anything is that. So we're going to work this out. You're going to get 63 over 64. That should be a 4. And then the bottom, 1 minus 1/2, is going to be a positive 1/2. And then you can flip and multiply, and you will get 63 over 32. For our last series, I wanted to show you something different. This alternates signs. Everything we've done up to now has had pluses, and again, you can just have minuses as well, but this one alternates signs. And it's the same kinds of numbers I was using in 7. It's just you got to pay attention to what your r is. If you do the second term over the first term, negative 1/2 over 1 is a negative 1/2, and that's what causes your signs to alternate. Okay, our n is going to be 6 for this situation, and our a sub 1 is, again, 1. So s sub 6, what we're trying to find, a sub 1 is 1, then 1 minus our r, which again is negative, so you want to make sure you put it in parentheses before you do the power, because a negative to an even power is going to end up being positive. And then we'll subtract it and end up with a negative. And then on the bottom, 1 minus r. Again, make sure you carry that negative because that'll make a difference in what's happening down here. So on the top, 1 times anything is that thing. So I just calculate this with my calculator, and I get 63 over 64. And then 1 ends up being plus a half. I'm going to write it as a improper fraction, 3 halves. And then I'm going to flip and multiply and reduce and get 21 over 32 as my final answer.